Welcome to the CFO channel. My name is Ali and I break down finance and accounting concepts. In this video, I'm going to break down how a SaaS business works. Let's start with the basics. SaaS stands for Software as a Service. To really understand how a SaaS business works, let me take you back in time. My fellow millennials, do you remember how we used to install Microsoft applications on our computers? It was through something called a CD. Do you remember those? For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, ignorance is bliss. In the past, I sound like a historian. We used to install software on our computers using CDs. However, around 2010, companies started to realize that the future of software was in the cloud. And so slowly but surely, companies started transitioning away from CDs and into selling us software that is stored on the cloud that we use through a subscription. There are many benefits to SaaS applications. For the purposes of this video, I'll cover 3 important ones. Number 1, you don't have to use CDs. Who like those things anyway? Number 2, your software is always updated. If you remember when we were using CDs, when you had to upgrade from Windows 95 to Windows 98, you had to get a new CD to install the new software. With SaaS, you don't need to do that. Because the software is stored in the cloud, the company can simply push software updates to software that is in the cloud, and you as a user have access to the most up-to-date software. And number 3, storage. Because all of this software now lives on the cloud, you don't have to use the storage on your computer to install all of these applications. So that means more of your computer's storage will be left for your own use. Now, let's go through some examples of some of the best known SaaS companies. Number 1, Microsoft. You probably already pay a monthly or annual subscription to Microsoft to get access to their applications for things like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Number 2, Netflix. Netflix is a SaaS company because you pay them a monthly subscription to be able to access movies and TV shows. And number 3, Dropbox. You pay them an annual or monthly fee to be able to access their cloud storage. Now, when it comes to the broader SaaS landscape, companies are usually categorized in 2 main buckets. The first is B2B SaaS, and the second is B2C SaaS. Yet other companies are a hybrid or combination of both. B2B SaaS basically means business to business SaaS. Companies that are in the B2B SaaS category include companies like Salesforce and Slack. These companies primarily or only sell software to business customers. B2C stands for business to consumer. B2C companies include companies like Netflix and Spotify. These are companies that primarily sell or only sell software to consumers like you and I. The reason why investors like SaaS companies usually comes down to 3 key reasons. Number 1, it's very scalable. What do I mean by scalable? It's very scalable because it's the type of business that you build once and then you sell whatever you've built to everybody around the world multiple times. This is very different from other types of businesses like manufacturing. For example, let's take the car business. Whenever you have to sell a car, you actually have to manufacture each individual car from scratch for each person that you sell it to. For software, it's not like that. When it comes to software, you'll code that software once, and then you'll sell access to that software in the cloud to millions of customers around the world. Let's take an example. Microsoft sells its Excel application to you and I, but it also sells its Excel application to companies like Nike, Ford, etc. And it does this without making any changes to Excel, the software. That makes it very scalable and powerful. Number 2, margins. Because the business is very scalable, such that you only have to code the software once and then sell it to 1 million customers versus a car company where you're making each and every individual car, SaaS businesses have great gross margins compared to other types of businesses. Gross margins for SaaS businesses tend to be between 70 and 80%. Why is a big gross margin a good thing? A higher gross margin means there is more revenue left over to cover your operating expenses and then to generate profit. The third thing that investors like about SaaS businesses is that they have a very predictable revenue stream. Because customers of a SaaS application tend to pay on a monthly or annual basis, the revenue for a SaaS business is very consistent month over month or year over year. If you look at other businesses, let's take an example of a business that sells school bags. There's some seasonality to these kinds of products. If you're a retailer that sells school bags, typically your revenue curve would peak in August, right before the school year, when all the parents and kids are rushing out to buy school supplies. And then for the remainder of the year, it would level off. For SaaS type businesses, there's no such seasonality. Revenue is very consistent month over month. Now, when it comes to terminology, there's a lot of SaaS-specific terminology. I'm not going to cover all of the terms, however, I will cover 3 of the most frequently used ones. Number 1, ARR. ARR means annual recurring revenue. The easiest way to understand ARR is that it is the total annual revenue that a SaaS company gets from its subscriptions. It's usually calculated by taking all of the company's customers, multiplying it by the amount they pay every month for a subscription, and then multiplying that number by 12 to annualize it. Closely related to ARR is something called MRR, which is monthly recurring revenue. It's exactly the same thing as ARR, except for it's calculated on a monthly basis as opposed to an annual basis. And number 3, ARPA, or average revenue per account. The easiest way to calculate ARPA is basically to take your MRR and divide it by the total customers a company has. This will give you ARPA, or the average amount that customers pay on a monthly basis for their subscription. So I hope this video helped you understand what a SaaS business is and how it works. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and check out my previous video here where I go over the basics of accrual accounting.